We had received the minutes earlier from Clerk Treasurer's office, and I know there had been one correction that was made. I think in the final version that the correction was made. I had omitted last time the personal reflection. So,
Seeing the changes made in the minutes, I'd go ahead and make a motion to approve as submitted.
I have a motion from Paul and a second from Nancy. Any other corrections, or if not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Tonight we have Ed Cole giving us our Du Bois Strong update. So,
Also known as Ed Strong.
it's actually Ed Cole.
I'll put it on. It's up to you guys. You know, I'm okay? Okay, well, I'll leave it on if you need me to, so don't mind. Thank you, first of all, for letting me speak to you this evening. Du Bois Strong, we're doing a number of different things, and I'm just going to hit about 5 quick highlights because it would get really boring. So anyway, the number one thing we're looking at is the annual meeting. You may have started to get the invitation. We started out with just a, hey, we're doing this, and we're doing it virtually. We really waited to the last minute to make sure that we could maybe still do it in person. Well, it's just not going to work. Like a lot of other people's meetings that we've had in person in the past, we just couldn't do it. So it's September the 2nd from 11:30 to 12:30. I will be speaking as usual, of course, and what I do is just kind of an overview of what we've accomplished last year and what we're looking at, and we also are again focusing on the Mid-State Corridor, some of the progress there, and so we have Mark Schrader, who's the president of the Regional Development Authority, and we have Hank Minke speaking on behalf of the Next Level Coalition. So Mid-State Corridor Next Level Coalition. So that is the program. We hope you'll be able to be a part of it. And if you, for some reason, don't happen to get an invitation, if you're just going like in the next day or two going, hey, I thought they were going to do that. Why didn't? Please send me an email, and we'll be glad to make sure you're included. We don't want anybody to be excluded that wants to be a part of it. And we try to make sure we get everybody on the list, but we don't always make it. We sometimes miss some folks. So anyway, the next thing we're doing, and it's very important to us, is as an organization, is strategic planning. We have not had a strategic plan update in about 5 years, so it was plenty of time to be doing it again. And it's really a good time because, as you can imagine, the people who have did strategic plans last year or the year before, obviously no one could figure COVID-19 being a part of it. So this gives us an opportunity, and if there is an advantage to COVID-19, and I suppose this would be a very small one, that we can look at the future with this in mind and then how we go forward. What we focused on in the past, and we don't think we are going to get too far away from it, is we have more jobs than people. So how do we bring in more people? Now, we have started to see the idea that maybe we need to expand a little bit more into business attraction. And we've been having that conversation more and more around the table. So I think the strategic plan will reflect that as well. So anyway, that's the second item. Third item, one of the things we're really proud of, and we're considering doing this again, but I'll tell you what we did the first time. We had some money left from our enterprise loan fund. It's for small businesses, specifically startups. We set aside $63,000. It's kind of a weird number, but I'll explain in a minute. We did $5,000 loans. They were 3-year payback at 1.5% interest, and we had one business owner who really just wanted $3,000, which, you know, that's great. I mean, obviously we don't want people to borrow more money than they want to pay back. So that's where we ended up with the $63,000. So we ended up with 13 loans, and it was one of the more gratifying things we've ever done. We had a lot of folks that were just saying, look, this is a great stopgap for me. Some of the folks, especially the retail folks that were involved, they had ordered summer clothing, they had ordered summer items. Well, the problem is when you've ordered it, it's coming. Well, you got to try to sell it. Well, if your doors are closed, your hours are reduced, it really puts them in a bind. So it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but 5,000 was a good thing. We do have some additional dollars we've kind of been waiting to do a second round on, so I need to get a hold of my enterprise loan people and say, hey, is this something we can do again? Because I think it's probably time to do it again, just for that purpose, because people are still struggling, especially and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, mom and pops or people that have a small staff and they're a small retail or a small restaurant. So anyway, we were really pleased with that, and we've actually had one lady who really had a big uptick in her business, and she's paid back her loan already. So it was, it was a very good thing, very good thing. So moving on, the next thing that we're probably more engaged in than anything is one of the things that I think is the most gratifying part of this job is when you see a local business that's looking to expand. We have a local small manufacturer that's looking to expand and add a second shift, and it's a tremendous thing. And you'd think, well, what in the world would they be doing this time of year? Well, believe it or not, their business has not seen a downturn so far. They're a very specialty-focused business, and they believe that they can sustain that. So they're looking at adding a second shift. It's not a lot of people. It's probably about 20 to 23 people. But now they're going to add some machinery. So the good thing is they're investing here. They're investing here. They're adding people here. So it's all thumbs up, good stuff. And I would tell you who it is, but they don't want to talk about it yet, because in case something would happen and the competition would find out that they're looking to expand. So anyway, a very good thing. And we've also had a fellow from Kentucky who has had several conversations with my office and some other folks around in construction. He's looking to either lease a building or build his own here locally, and he wants to be in Jasper. He is an industrial supply company, for lack of better words. I can't be any more specific than that either. But again, it's not a big business, but it's the kind of business that we can absorb very easily. Probably, again, about 20, 25 employees, and it would fit very, very well for what we're doing. He has some suppliers here already, so he's been very encouraged and wants to try to expand his business here. So two really good prospects that we've stayed in contact with, and both are still looking forward to making things happen. Last thing, we're doing this, and I think I've described this before. It's a little confusing, quite honestly. It's called the Neighborhood Assistance Program. It's through the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. To boil this thing down, what happens is every year, every fiscal year, the state of Indiana sets aside $2.5 million to allow not-for-profit organizations, 501c3s, to apply for these tax credits. It's $2.5 million in tax credits. And what happens is, they essentially, and this is, believe me, making it much shorter because it's a government program, and we'd really be bored if I got into it any more than this, but what happens is they take essentially the $2.5 million and divide it by the number of people who apply. So then what happens with that is, if you want to be a part of this, say, for example, Paul, you come to me and you say, hey, I'd like to be a contributor to this neighborhood assistance program, and because I would like to do the tax credit, but I also, and here's the plus, you also are donating to a good cause, and I'll explain the cause in a minute. You can donate as little as $100. Well, what happens is you can get $50 off of your taxes, your state tax credit. It's a direct credit. It comes right off your tax liability. If you did $500, obviously it's $250. If you did $1,000, it's $500, that sort of thing. This is not a big program, but it has a tremendous amount of impact. For example, this year, the tax credits are $2,080. We think, well, that's not much money. But we can double that by asking for the donations or the investments and make that $4,160. So it's a very good program for us. And we've had higher amounts and we've had lower amounts. But the good thing about this, and this is really where it's been the most gratifying thing that we have done as far as this type of thing where you get involved in the government stuff. We have done 9 $4,000 they're $4,000, I'm sorry, home buyer assistance. I can't talk, not enough caffeine this afternoon. Home buyer assistance. If you're looking to buy a house and you fit the income guidelines, then we work with TRICAP to get the income guidelines correctly done. Then you buy a house here in Du Bois County and you qualify, you can get $4,000 toward the down payment of a house. And we've done that 9 times, and we're pretty excited about that because I said, not a lot of money, not a big program, but very good impact, so.
Is this the same program, Ed? Is that through Du Bois Strong? Or I know TRICAP had something like this going on in 2019. We
Yep.
took advantage of that, so.
Yeah, TRICAP does exactly the same thing. We try not to compete. We talk to each other the whole time because we don't want them to feel like we're trying to get elbow their people or pry away their investors or contributors and vice versa. So, yeah, it is exactly the same thing, Paul. And probably the last thing I would just like to say is thank you. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I tried to give you the quick overview.
We had our budget meeting yesterday. I think, Mayor, you're the one that mentioned, and any kind of progress on any of these companies up around Crane that we can filter down here?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the things that, and a matter of fact, Dean and I have had this conversation too, because one of the things we feel like we're missing some opportunities there. The only one, of course, is the rangeland folks that's really the connection that we have, and we know that there's got to be more. And I think it's just a matter of getting in front of those folks and then saying, hey, look, we've got this available here. It's a great place to be. It's a great place to do business. And quite honestly, if you're doing business here, you're no further away than if you're in Bedford or any of the other satellites around there. So we're not a quote a long drive, air quotes. So
I guess it's just a spur to get on it.
yeah, it is. It truly is it's an opportunity I think we're missing. As we go forward, we've just got to say, hey, wait a minute, don't forget about us. And I think we have. Well, you all live here. We have a very good story to tell, and we need to be telling it there. So thank you for saying that.
Any other questions for Ed?
Thank you very much. And I know I probably say this every time, but your support is important to us, not just the monetary support, but believing in what we're doing. And then staying in contact with us. We appreciate that very much because one of the big things, and I've seen it with economic development organizations before, where they'll start off on some wonderful program they think they're doing, and they have not thoroughly checked with the community and gotten the community support and the buy-in, and they end up people saying, well, what are those economic development people doing anyway? And it really is a bad thing, but I've never happened here, and I so appreciate your interest in allowing me to come and check in with you once in a while. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Okay, next thing I have on the agenda is declaration of the fiscal body from the Jasper Public Library. Christine?
Hi, everybody. This is the library approved this last week at our board meeting, essentially because the library is an appointed body for years and years. We have had the county council as our fiscal body with some changes to statutes. They had everybody have an opportunity to go back and look to see who really should be that fiscal body. Well, with the majority of our tax assessment for the library district being within the city boundaries, it was determined between that and the number of parcels that it should be the Jasper City Council. So essentially what happens here is we would continue forward. It would be, of course, a non-binding review of our budget unless we would fall under criteria where we would go over the growth quotient, or if we would have a situation where we would have too much in reserves, where we're not even close to that threshold by any means. So, but yeah, it's just simply switching it from the county to the city is all we would be doing. Try to keep that simple.
The county council would have reviewed your budget before you sent it on.
They do it, yeah, they just do a quick review, make sure everything's in order, and then we keep moving forward.
And for this, would this be the budget that you're getting ready to pass?
It would not come in until next year because this is due for October 1st. The county has already done that for us this year, so this would not be, and it is reviewed annually just to make sure, but again, the only time we have ever went over the ABQ, the growth quotient, which this year for the library is set at, for libraries across Indiana, is set at 4.2%. The only time we've ever, since I've been the director, had that happen was the year of the referendum, because of course our budget was going to go up because of the debt. So I did go to the county council for approval on that, but that's the only scenario that I've ever had where that has come into place.
So this document is just basically saying that we're the board that you've chosen, so to speak, to,
It's the board that is chosen by the state statute.
okay, so, and again, sorry to be painfully obvious here, but this was always done by the county before?
It was, and I think typically, they were actually shocked that anybody was going to be changing. It was just like, oh, go get your county council to sign this. You know, we started looking and we're like, well, it shouldn't be the county. We have, I think when we looked at the qualifications, 85% of our net assessed value was inside of the city limits of Jasper. So if it's over 50%, it should be that body. So like I know Huntingburg is making the change too from the Huntingburg Public Library is going to be making the change from the county to the Huntingburg City Council. Now, of course, the contractual library.
Right, that's what I was going to ask.
So yeah, so I will have one with each then instead of both of them going to the county.
And we really only review it if there's questions.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's only reviewed if we meet those qualifications. Yeah. And like I said, I've never had that except for the 1 year of the referendum. So.
It's taking place next year. It will take place next.
Yes, this would be moving forward from this year, this coming next year, moving on.
And Renee, you've looked this over, I mean, this is,
Yeah.
okay.
Do we need a motion to accept this or just going through? So
Kevin will be the person that signs on behalf of the fiscal body. So,
Okay.
if you want to authorize Kevin to sign the declaration, that would be great.
Well, I would like to go ahead and make a motion to have Kevin sign the declaration.
I will second that.
I have a motion from Paul and a second from Chad. Any further discussion on it? Kevin, you want any questions?
Thank you for trusting the Jasper City Council with this duty.
Great partnership as always, so.
So do you have the original for him to
I
sign?
do. Is it okay if I have him sign now so I can get it sent off? Okay. There we go. There you go.
All right, I had a motion and a second. I didn't ask for the vote, though, I don't think, did I? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Probably good, because you're starting to sign already.
Quick note on there, we were told yesterday on the arts side that they were moving forward a week ahead of completion. Library hanging on the same schedule?
Yeah, the schedule is for the building, so it's, I was just down there doing a tour. I feel like that's one of my main jobs now, is tour guide. About twice a week I'm down there, but it's amazing though, guys, seeing the difference. I was down there last week to this week. It's just seeing the amount of changes every single week. It's coming right along. The canopies have went up, the awnings have went up this week, and the trim around the brick and everything, and I think it's really making everything pop and give it that accent that it needed, so.
Exterior looks great.
As part of the completion, will the parking lot be finished also as part of the completion?
Yeah, absolutely. It will be blacktopped. The curb is already done. The curb's already been completed. They didn't want to do the blacktop until, of course, they got most of their heavy machinery out of there as to avoid damaging it.
Okay.
I had a question on that. Years ago, they ran that sidewalk around from, that looks more brick. Is that going back again?
It is.
Okay.
It is. Yes. Yes, that was made sure we had numerous talks about that, Phil, so we did. Yeah, absolutely.
I have somebody else ask me too, the article that the Burgess wrote the other day about moving the Freedom Lamp. Have we got anywhere with that, moving it from the old library to the new library? I hadn't heard anything from.
It's at, right as you enter the library.
That I know that's the number one. And that, I mean, right now, as long as that continues to be a park, I think it's that becomes city's property. So I didn't say that. Don't let the record show that by any means. But no, I think that was a big thing. When we move forward with the referendum, of course, we want to respect that. That's a great piece of heritage in Jasper, and I'm very, very confident it will find the proper home.
Okay.
And it was a letter to the editor of the.
Oh, okay, I missed that one.
That's very nice.
It was,
Refresher on the story.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story. But, okay.
It was brought up about every other month during the whole discussion.
It was probably the second to third most asked question I had during the whole process.
Really?
Oh, maybe even more, yeah.
And the other part are those two other, like War Memorial
The War Memorials.
foreigners.
Yeah.
We've been asked about those before, too.
Yeah.
I was amazed. I'm 43. I've never heard that story before, ever. Yep, well, must be, but never had heard it, yeah.
No, it's a very big point for a lot of people, and I understand that. And we want to make sure that, I think, we'll all work together and make sure that,
And as we plan forward with that property, we'll have to look at.
yes, absolutely.
Where's the best employment for those?
Yeah, and it may not be with us, it may be at a different, site, of course, so. But I hope so, because I've insured a lot of people that it will find a proper home, so I'll keep that promise. Is there anything else? Thank you, guys, have a great day.
Thank you.
Appreciate the job you do.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-15. It's an ordinance adopting rules, regulations, conditions, and non-recurring charges applying to the utility service. It's amending ordinance number 2009-9. This ordinance is available for one reading only. Could I have a motion to consider the ordinance for one reading only?
I'll make the motion to read the ordinance for one reading.
I have a motion from Nancy.
I'll second.
A second from Phil. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Could I have the motion to have the ordinance read in full or by title only?
I'll go ahead and make the motion to be read by title only, please.
Motion. Paul for title only. Second from Kevin. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Would the city attorney please read ordinance number 2020-15 by title only?
Ordinance number 2020-15, an ordinance adopting rules, regulations, conditions, and non-recurring charges applying to the utility service, I should say, utility services.
Can you give us a brief explanation?
Yes.
And also, it amends ordinance number 2009-9. So it looks a lot different than what you might see if you looked in the code right now, but really, that's because I just organized the language so that all of the language dealing with check, electronic transfer, and direct pay program is under that section. All the language that deals specifically with the direct pay program, bank draft is under that. So not a lot of language changed, as you might think. What we did do is add credit card and debit card as a method of payment that is now allowed, which you'll see on the second page, number 4. And then with respect to those two methods of payment, the ordinance has to reflect whether or not we can or would add processing charges, what do I want to say? Fees and the transaction fees. So the decision has been made that those would be passed on to the customers. So that language is reflected there. We do not, according to the State Board of Accounts, have to specifically identify what those charges are, but we just have to reflect in our ordinance that will be passed on to the customer. So
An idea on what the charge will be?
we do. I think it's no more than $3 for the convenience. I'm going to get this wrong. 3%, or $1.50. It's been a while since I looked at it. I think it's $1.50 and 3%.
Or 3%?
There are several different charges, and they would all apply.
Okay.
Some overlap, and some don't. But definitely, we are not taking on those charges on our own.
It's covering the credit card charge as well, so
That's
that's taken, and then if there's a little other convenience fee or something. Okay.
So you're saying like, as an example, if somebody's bill's around $150, you're probably looking at $5 total for the convenience fee plus the 3% then, right? Okay.
Roughly, yeah.
Are we charging that automatically, or, I mean, it says here something about if there is a processing charge to JMU for the customer's use, so are we automatically charging, or is that
If we're charged, and we are being charged those.
credit card?
So we will only charge the customer what we are being charged by the credit card company. Yep.
So is that like a customer calls in or comes to the counter and pays for it, or?
They can do that.
Okay.
They can also pay online.
So if they come in there and they scan the credit card or process the card, they will know at that time what the fee was?
Yes, they will.
Oh, and that'll just be included in there.
I haven't seen the technology myself, but as I understand it, something pops across the screen immediately that asks them to confirm that they want to go forward with these fees in mind.
And do we do that same thing with the train? Because you can get tickets online with the train.
Well, I can't answer that. I don't know. It's not.
Oh, there's a processing fee.
It is not the same service.
Okay.
We don't have the same company they go through. I want to say it's Ticket Turtle or something like that.
Oh, on the park.
I think so.
Okay. I mean, it would get expensive to eat all those fees.
Now, with the train, though, I think it's a retail product in a sense, though, too. See, so it's not like.
Not a service.
They would build that into the ticket price.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Sounds good.
This sets us up to really do what we've been wanting to do for a long time, and that's make credit card payments available to the public. Most of the public won't use it because of the fees, but if they're in that situation where they need to, they will.
People are really used to using their charge cards for a lot of things. Our debit card.
I will go ahead and make a motion to approve ordinance number 2020-15 as submitted.
Motion, Paul.
I will change the title to services.
I'll second.
Second from Kevin. Any further discussion on this?
When will this be active? Do we know?
We don't know that.
We don't know that. This step has to take place before we can really get that final schedule. But
I think we're very close. We're down to the point where Ashley is working with the software company through whom we do our billing, and they are creating the web page that is necessary. So we're on the last steps.
I think you had mentioned that a majority of cities are doing this.
most cities end up passing the fees on similar to this.
So does this set us up as an example to use in other departments also for collection of fees?
Well, so for the utility department, we had to find a credit card company that was able to interface with our software, our billing software. That was challenging, but we did, and that's why we're with this company. We are also in the process of setting up credit card or online payment for things like building permits, and that will be through the company that helps us with our website in general. It's called eGov, and they offer that service. So the plan is to go with that company in other departments.
Just another convenient way to do business. Yeah.
So you have a motion from Paul and a second from Kevin. Any other discussion, questions? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is ordinance number 2020-18. And this is an ordinance regulating the use or the discharge of any firearms, bows, or any other like instrument within the corporate limits of the city of Jasper, Indiana. It repeals ordinance number 2004-12. So I'd like a motion to consider this ordinance for one reading only.
I'd like to make that motion.
I have a motion from Chad. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from John. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Could I have a motion, ordinance read in full or by title only?
I'll make a motion to go ahead and read by title only, please.
I have a motion from Paul to read by title only.
I'll second.
I have a second from John.
Falling asleep today.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Would the city attorney please read ordinance number 2020-18 by title only?
Ordinance number 2020-18, an ordinance regulating the use of or the discharge of any firearms, bows, or any other like instrument within the corporate limits of the city of Jasper, Indiana, repealing ordinance number 2004-12.
Could I have a motion to pass and adopt ordinance number 2020-18?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Chad. Do I have a second? I have a second from John. And at this point in time, I think we go into discussion. So, do you want to go over the changes that were made from the original? Do you have that? Got it, I think.
Actually, in my memo today.
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah, I did. Okay. I'll just start at the top. So section 2, guns and cannons, used to be guns, cannons, and crossbows. So basically, section 2, which is actually 7.20.010, will deal specifically with what you might refer normally to as firearms, guns, rifles, revolvers, pistols, and the prohibition of the discharge of those within the city limits. I would note that it had been brought to my attention, this is not a change that you saw, and I would suggest that we may need to include this as well. The term licensed gallery was used in the licensed shooting gallery is the original language. I'm not sure that is timely. It's probably better to have public or private shooting or archery range included in there. So I did some research actually in the last 2 days after that was brought to my attention, and specifically spoke to folks from the gun club. There's nothing in Indiana that is a licensing body for a gun range. So I would suggest that we remove that language and change that.
Is it in here somewhere in this new version? I couldn't find it.
It would have.
Where is it?
Section 2.
Section 2, which is in the ordinance 7.20.010. And it's about second from the last sentence.
Yeah.
Okay. The next section then starts discussion of of archery equipment. So we've added the ability to use three-dimensional targets. I'm sorry, I don't have this in color and it's pretty faint, so I'm trying to see. We added a 6-foot requirement minimums on the earthen embankments, building structures, and ballistic cloths as a backstop.
Point of clarity. So the building structure and the earthen embankments, they already had that requirement. So the 6-foot requirement has been added to the netting, ballistic netting. So it's more uniform now.
First of all, what is a three-dimensional target?
A deer.
Deer, turkey,
Yeah, like
pig, whatever they've got.
I don't know, composite, what,
All right.
I'm not sure what,
Foam or plastic.
I would call it a composite rubberish.
All right.
It's foamish. It receives well. It's not a hard, you wouldn't use a hard plastic, for example.
Dan Bruce has one in his backyard.
Yeah, I know what you mean now.
Okay.
we changed the distance from 90 feet in section 3 to 40 yards.
Can I have a point of clarity on there? I'm not trying to rain on the parade there. Chad probably is more of an expert on it than most of us here, but the direction of it, as an example, like my backyard, if my neighbor wanted to set up a target in their backyard, and I'm just thinking out loud here because my shooting, and thinking of my shooting ability on there, if the target has, or the backdrop has to be 100% bigger than the target, and he has a 3-foot target, so he's going to have a backdrop of about 6 feet, and if it faces my back, in other words, he's shooting towards my backyard where I'm grilling, my back patio is, and it's only 6 feet, because the target's 3 feet, 6 feet wide, 6 feet tall, and he's 30 yards out, is that correct?
So first of all, it'll be 9 feet, right? It'll be 3 feet on this side, 3 feet on that side, and 3 feet in the middle.
Even with that said, I don't even know if I could hit the backdrop, much less the target from there.
It just says 100% larger.
Yeah.
No, it'd be 6 feet.
It'd only be 6, it wouldn't be 9, Renee.
It says,
It's in the middle, and then you just have to have 6 feet behind it.
Why aren't we specifying the width of what it would have to be instead of saying 100% larger?
it says in each direction. 100% larger in each direction.
Okay. So even with that said, is there anything in there that can control, I don't know if I feel comfortable having somebody shooting a bow towards my house, even with a target on it. I mean, as I said, you guys who hunt and do this, I don't know anything about archery, so enlighten me that I'm going to be safe with my family out in my backyard, and my neighbors are out there shooting. And the second part of that, while you're clarifying that,
I think, Phil, I'm just looking further down, it says unsafe conditions. It said the code enforcement officer and police department have an authority to declare a range created under this ordinance unsafe.
how subject is that to,
But I mean, you could
any view it as safe?
say, you can't be shooting in this direction.
With or without an ordinance, that is unsafe.
But I'm not comfortable.
Here, we're saying it's unsafe.
Okay. So in other words, my neighbor can't set up that,
That's correct. Not shooting toward your house.
and then,
Imagine it, I mean, knowing where you live, Phil, and imagining it in my mind, I can't imagine that would be seen as safe.
my neighbor's house has a lot in between, and I'm just trying to figure in, like the typical city lot, like how they could possibly put a range anywhere in that yard that would be safe for me.
I don't see it either.
I'm afraid of that, to be honest with you. So,
I think most small city lots, it's going to be deemed unsafe.
okay,
regardless.
so to regulate this here, I would have to, in other words, if my neighbors were shooting that bow and arrow in that yard, I would have to call the city police, or and they would come out, and then somebody would deem that to be safe or unsafe at the time.
That's, yeah, I'd rather that than you dealing with it yourself. I mean, if you can deal with it yourself, great, but.
If they're armed with a bow and arrow, I'd rather have somebody else do it.
In the meantime, though, someone could get hurt.
Yeah. My
Before
second
that
question is on that same stipulation there, as far as deeming it to be safe, the age of the person shooting. In other words, if there's a 12-year-old kid out there, it is, in your mind, unsafe for him to be shooting out there without the instruction or the supervision of an adult. Is that correct? In other words, if mom and dad are inside the house watching TV and the kids are out in the yard, they know they gave him permission to do that. Is he considered safe? In other words, he can shoot that bow and arrow in that yard?
A parent cannot make an unsafe condition safe by simply giving permission.
We did not put age restriction.
I asked that on the last time, and you said that by definition, that would be considered unsafe. So I just want to clarify that. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
And I told you my situation that happened in my
Right.
situation here. I don't have
Right.
to repeat that, but, the parent was clearly in the house and gave the child permission, and my gas grill was a deer target, so, but, I just want to make sure that that's not deemed to be safe in any way, shape, or form.
No. And that's a violation, I mean, certainly of the current ordinance, the way it is.
Again, I'm not,
Articulated it more clearly with this new language.
I'm not trying to take away the sport, me of all people, I love to see sports like that. I just want to make sure that, I don't want this one to come back and haunt us, so.
I got a question about the crossbow, and it kind of runs in the same direction here. I'm looking at this is the closest thing to a gun I've ever seen, this picture. Now, is it more powerful than regular bow and arrow? And, I don't know, I'm just wondering why we would want to change that, because to me, that's about as much dangerous as having a gun, sitting in your backyard or what.
I think we should look at the whole thing and take out crossbow and compound bow both from being allowed and put those back up there where guns and cannons are. That's my opinion. I've talked to probably 20, 25 people about this. And I've talked to any group I'm in, I ask, what do you think about this? And immediately, whoa. Even people that are hunters, they were very much opposed to this happening within the city limits. Target practice, not shooting animals, but target practice, very much opposed, felt like it was a very, very dangerous situation.
I'd like to address Dave's question first, and then respond to you, Nancy. The question about are crossbows more powerful than compounds? Some are, and some are not. They have roughly the same capabilities. It depends on the archer in question. And also, there's other factors that go into determining the strength or velocity of an arrow or bolt release. But one of the things that I was really excited about, and that's you've all received these pictures, Nancy, you had asked for pictures, is represented by this picture of the young lady holding the crossbow. Obviously, she's a person in a wheelchair. Currently, that's not allowed by ordinance, and this is a perfect opportunity both for youth to be introduced in a well-regulated environment to this sport, and also people with certain disabilities can enjoy the sport as well. Right now, we're not allowing that. To the point about to some of your concern there, Nancy, we've gone since 2004 with a 7-0 vote at that time by City Council at the recommendation of the Board of Public Works and Safety at that time. We've gone since then till now without any serious events, serious problems with enforcement of the ordinance or incidents. I think it's a pretty good track record. This is simply an improvement upon what we've established already since 2004.
I think most people would be surprised that you're even allowed to shoot a bow and arrow within the city limits. People know you cannot shoot guns. I would say most people don't even know this ordinance exists and that they're even allowed to do that. That's my personal opinion.
I'm not real thrilled with the crossbow either. I don't have a big problem with the rest of it, but the crossbow bothers me a little bit because to me, like I said, it's got a safety on it, I'm sure. But again, that and the power of it, shooting in a neighborhood or in an area like that, doesn't seem
What
right.
actually brought you to bring this to the council for these changes?
Well, I use a crossbow from time to time, and I can't practice it in the city limits.
You also told me you wouldn't be practicing it in your
I
backyard.
don't do that.
Where would you practice it?
My mother-in-law's has a spot that complies with the ordinance. That's where I practice.
Okay, I know where she lives.
Do we have an archery range in Jasper? Beaver Lake? That's it, right? So, what if we were to say it couldn't be used unless it was at an archery range?
I'm not so sure that's okay.
You've got an indoor at
The gun club?
No, great.
Well, Yeah, there is an indoor target at the Great Outdoors. I don't know that Kevin wants 20, 30 people a day coming out there. You have to do a lot of practice to be very good at this, and to be an ethical. If you're using it for hunting, for example, to be an ethical hunter, you've got to practice a lot to be proficient.
I hate and I hope I'm allowed to even do this, but I see the chief sitting in the back corner of the room in there. Would it be possible to ask them how many complaints we've gotten that you guys have seen due to bow activity, recurve, longbow, compound bow? Do you mind coming up, Nathan? I mean, I hate to put you on the spot, and I know you don't have the exact figures, but.
Compounds are allowed now, yeah.
Nathan Schmidt, Chief of Police. We haven't had issues. We haven't had issues that I can recall of at all, especially since I've been actually on the police department. I can't, I think I came on in 2001. I do remember being a little bit of a issue in 2004 when there was discussion on this and they drafted it out. I don't remember what the details were at that time to make it come up, to even be brought up to the council, but I do remember there was some issues with it. Somebody not doing it safely. As far as we're concerned, I think one thing is what we worked with Chad and the city attorney. From our standpoint, we're kind of we have a non-opinion on it. We just really like the give us discretion to say that, hey, if there's something unsafe, we can stop it, no arguments, and we can bring it in front of a board, the Board of Public Works, and they can either verify that it was unsafe or they can go against us, but we want to be able to stop that activity when it happens. But, I think the big thing you'll have is when Caleb does bow season start, probably about 2 weeks before bow season, is when you see people dust these things off for the most part. And there are people who do it for just recreation, but most of them, I'd say 85% of them, dust them off 2 weeks before bow season, make sure it's still mounted or still zoomed in or sighted in for what it was last year, and they take a couple shots and they go and then they go out hunting. So,
Nathan, one quick question there. By reading this ordinance, do you feel your officers would be able to interpret this and apply whether it's safe or unsafe by what's written in this ordinance? In other words, is there enough written in the ordinance to say, for them to look at it and say, yeah, that's not safe because of the reason in this ordinance here?
Yes, I think that my direction as chief, and I assume anybody that's on our police department, would you have the discretion to be able to know that with the line in there that says, hey, if it's unsafe, any officer goes out there and says it's unsafe, it doesn't qualify. It has to be somebody that knows archery. They can shut it down and make it come in front of the board.
Okay,
before
you're comfortable with that?
I do feel comfortable about that. And I think the big thing is too, and it's funny that you said it, Phil, because I was saying the same thing back there when you mentioned it, is everybody pictures their backyard. And Paul's backyard is a heck of a lot different from Kevin's backyard, and your backyard, and Nancy's. I mean, old Jasper, there's probably not a place up there, like John said, that you could actually do this at. Bill Kaiser, he could probably shoot about anything he wants short of a cannon and not have any problems. So I mean, it's just you gotta picture. Everybody pictures their own yard, and that's why I think why it's good language for the police department to be able to shut it down, even if people try to comply with it. If it's just not safe, there's not a place on Dewey Street that you can do it.
I guess it would make me more comfortable about it.
Myself as well.
I think it's clear enough.
Is this within the corporate limits or the 2-mile jurisdiction? It says corporate limits on the title.
Well, so to answer that question is just the city limits, just the corporate limits. This is an ordinance not part of our UDO. The UDO is the extraterritorial jurisdiction. This is not. But I would like to say, comment to the previous topic about discretion and what is safe and what is not safe. And I will tell you that I personally am not comfortable from a legal standpoint passing an ordinance that up front we know that the majority of the lots in the city of Jasper are unsafe. I wouldn't want to be our code enforcement officer or the police department that now has to go out and determine which of these lots is safe and which isn't. And the other thing is, of course, lots differ, but what about the users? I mean, what is safe on one person's lot with a experienced archer may not be safe when you have a young person.
Yeah.
And if it's a young person, how old do you have to be in order to qualify to be safe? And I have a lot of concerns about passing this.
Thank you for speaking up about that.
You know, I love sports, and I think it's outstanding to try to create ways that people can get out and do things, but I just have a hard time distinguishing this from any other, what we would consider to be a deadly weapon.
I feel too. And I appreciate you putting this picture of this girl in this wheelchair on here, but that doesn't mean that everybody that uses a crossbow is going to be in a wheelchair.
That's true. That's true.
So, I mean, that was nice of you to do that, but maybe there's somewhere else she could go shoot also.
Moles at the gun club area down there, out by on Gun Club Road.
You know, I did speak with them, and they do allow archery.
Is that within the city limits?
It is.
Well,
I think it's right outside, because
Oh, is it right outside?
I think it's just outside.
they allow shooting too. They allow guns too.
It's in the extra 2-mile jurisdiction, but
You have to be a member to.
you have to be a member to.
You do.
But my point is, you can take that out there and shoot it in the gun club range, is what I'm hearing here, versus shooting it in your neighborhood or down the street or wherever. So to me, I mean, if it's going to be utilized as a weapon, you know, take it out to the gun club, use it out there. So, personal opinion.
I feel like if this is something that's going to be permitted in the city limits, then maybe we have to have more clarity on the conditions that have to be present, the space, the distance, age, those kinds of things, as opposed to saying it's allowed, but it's up to the police now to determine if something's unsafe.
Well, and that's very subjective, because, you know, your buddy, you might say, well, that's fine, you go ahead, but, you know, you're not allowed to do that over across the street. I mean, it becomes difficult for the police to enforce something like this.
I have a hard time with the age one unless you mandate that anybody that's younger than 18 has to have an adult present on there, because I know 35-year-olds that are not as mature as a 16-year-old.
And that is precisely why we did not put an age limit in. That was Chad's point. How do you know? But as much as that's your point, that's also a concern that I have, so.
I will state again, some of the history on this was in 2004, then Chief Gunselman wanted to know, he wanted clarification, because his thought process was that perhaps bows were prohibited with the existing ordinance at the time. It didn't state it explicitly. And after that process, a 7-0 vote determined that they were not considered a prohibited firearm. And of course, they're not a firearm. So that's where we're at today, looking to improve on the foundation that we have. I'm not looking to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. Mayor, I believe there's some folks in the audience that might have some comment if you're willing to have that today.
We'll open it up to public comment.
Be great.
I didn't mean to jump the gun with the chief. I just wanted to get his take on it one more.
No, that's.
Thank you, Chief.
Anyone from the public that would like to make comment, please come forward to the podium and identify yourselves.
Hi, and thank you for the opportunity. to be able to hopefully lend some clarity and answer some questions. My name's Kevin Shepard. I represent myself and the Great Outdoors here in Jasper. We are an archery shop. We sell firearms and archery equipment to a vast majority of the people, and some of them are actually sitting here now. So with conversations I had with Chad about looking at possibly including the crossbow situation, it's really just a continuation of the ordinance that's already in place. I was actually had an opportunity to be able to sit in on the conversations in 2004. So with my input of DNR, Department of Natural Resources, I think Tim Beck was actually one of the individuals that was on that. A couple of city council members, chief of police at the time as well. And all those, we sat down. And one of the questions a minute ago was, why was this brought up in 2004? Well, what happened was that an incident happened in another community. And so, and it was somebody put an arrow through a grill or something along that line. Okay, so it was somebody being irresponsible at that particular time. And so a little bit of the history, I apologize, was that there were going to be ordinances that were going to be in place, and they were going city by city to be able to put those in place. And a couple of the communities in the area had already passed an ordinance where they weren't able to be able to shoot their crossbow or not crossbow. At the time, it was compound bows and recurve bows and longbows. For the most part, still primitive equipment. Okay, and the case in point that the performance on compound bows at the time was increasing as well. But that was it's still considered primitive equipment though, per DNR. So they were looking to be able to do that, and we actually had an opportunity to contact some people through the Du Bois County Sportsman Club and through some other channels, and at that ordinance when they were going to the city council was going to be able to declare that they were not going to be able to have an archery and shoot in the city of Jasper. I don't remember the number, but it was someplace in excess of 300 people showed up at that council meeting opposing the fact that they weren't going to be able to shoot bows in their backyard. So at that time, what happened was it was tabled because of the overwhelming response, and then that's when we formed this group to be able to come up with something that was workable and equitable with everybody, and that's what we came up with on the old ordinance. So when Chad approached me with this, basically with some clarification on a couple of different things and some opportunities to be able to tweak it and then upgrade some of the legal, because it's a little bit more clear from a legal standpoint, what the police can do as far as, and code of enforcement and the steps that are involved where they can do that. I think there's wordage in there about being able to do it for a misdemeanor, and that's beyond my scope of expertise. But anyway, there's offenses and stuff like that. So it gave some enforcement coding to the police department on a set, and so there was some clarity that was added to that. Again, a little bit of history. So what happens is that crossbows have always been illegal to be able to use as hunting equipment. Always have been.
Legal or illegal?
Legal. So what happens is that back in the day, that it was only for handicapped individuals. So what happens was if you weren't able to be able to pull 35 pounds on your compound bow, you were out. So, or if you only had one limb, you're out. Or if you had back trouble or surgery or heart attack or whatever, and if you couldn't pull 35 pounds, which again is a DNR legal ramification, a legal listing for what you can do hunt with a bow. So that's the minimum. So all those people were out. Then they they adopted the opportunity to be able to use crossbows from a handicapped perspective. That's the wording in per DNR. I think it should be restricted individuals now, but be more politically correct, but that's not how it was written. But anyway, let's fast forward now. Indiana DNR has allowed for now crossbows to be legal for everybody to be able to use. And so probably, give or take, 40 to 50% of our archery sales now are with crossbows. And so there's lots of people. We've got an aging hunting population who are going to crossbows. And then to play to Chad's point as well, is that, again, what happens is you have to be able to pull 35 pounds to be able to use a compound bow or a recurve bow or a longbow. Most individuals can't do that until they become 13, 14, 15 years old. Some people can never do that. And so that restricts them from ever being interested in archery or being able to participate. So crossbows has given an opportunity for a lot more people who were restricted by compound bows in the past to be able to participate. DNR's looking to be able to increase that participation for a lot of different reasons, mostly because we have a diminishing hunter population, and so they want more people afield, and they're giving people more and more options to be able to do that. Crossbow is one of them. So again, with the conversation that we had with Chad, the addition to crossbows is really just a continuation of an ordinance that we've had in working since 2004 and has worked and served the public well, not only from an opportunity standpoint, but from an enforcement standpoint, which we haven't really had to ever use. But it's there. So this ordinance is more about clarification of an addition of the crossbows to an ordinance and an opportunity that already exists.
Kevin, do you feel your sales in these items are growing? I mean, are we seeing a ramp up, or is there a trend in archery right now that is?
Because of it's mushrooming, it's huge. Like I said, approaching half of my archery sales now are all in crossbows.
Okay. Is crossbows and archery together both rising though? I mean,
no.
Okay.
No, what happens is that because of the ease of use of a crossbow, and I'll apologize, Dave, I don't know you well, but it's not like a gun other than it has you shoulder and you pull a trigger. Everything after that, it's a bow pulled horizontally instead of vertically. So the only function from a firearm standpoint that would be something that you and I would recognize is that I put it to my shoulder and I pull a trigger. Everything else about the crossbow is the bow. It's just the limbs are pulled horizontally rather than vertically. It does have a safety.
How do you control the power on a crossbow?
I'm sorry?
How do you control the power on a crossbow?
It's actually, there's very little control that anybody has. It's actually how the performance of the bow is built originally. You can't really modify it to be able to change the power of the bow. So you don't really control that. If you're being controlled by how do I keep it from going off when I don't want it to, okay. Yeah, you don't have, and back in the day with your compound bow, and even today, you can make some changes with your compound bow, normally within about a 10-pound range, but a crossbow is a crossbow. It's designed to be able to be a certain way, and it basically won't function if you try to make modifications to it. Yeah.
So you're saying your sales of totally archery is relatively flat. It's just that more and more of them are going to crossbow, and less of them would be traditional.
Actually, with the advent or with the inclusion of crossbows in, we're actually seeing archery in general grow.
And the only reason why I'm asking that is, the number of occurrences. Are we going to see more and more of these issues in the Jasper?
Well, that's why we write an ordinance, so we don't see those issues, and we have guidelines to be able to go by type situation. What happens is that because we have the inclusion of children that are and young adults who can't pull 35 pounds, and we have the inclusion of people who are older and have health issues maybe that can't pull 35 pounds that still want to be able to participate in archery, because we have that, and we have also a growing number of female shooters, because again, that 35 pound is a little bit stout for some folks. I've seen a drastic increase in the number of female participants in archery then as well. So basically, again, I apologize, but what happens is that by adding to this, the crossbows to an existing ordinance that has served us well, we're actually trying to be able to be more inclusive and less restrictive with who can be able to participate in archery.
I don't have a problem with that, but my problem is doing it in the city. I mean, again, why don't we say they were fine and dandy at a range of some sort?
Okay, and I appreciate that as well, but what happens is not everybody has an opportunity to be able to go out to Beaver. Not everybody's a member of the gun club, and so currently I can practice in my backyard with my recurve and my longbow and my compound bow, and so again, it's just almost I'm not going to say logical, but it's an inclusion of more archery equipment.
But if you're using, you're practicing for hunting, what would be another reason you would use this if you didn't go hunt? So why not go out to where you're going to hunt and practice out there?
For convenience is a big portion of it. Not everybody has an opportunity to be able to hunt on farmland or cropland or something along that line, because there's livestock there, there's going to be crops there, that kind of stuff. So sometimes it's a timing issue as far as whether I can get there or not. The woods I hunt out in the Cayenne Bottoms, we can't get to where the woods we hunt because we'd have to cross his bean field or his cornfield to be able to get that. And I don't have permission to be on the two properties adjoining it. So one of the conversations that we had back in 2004 was that we didn't want the archery situation to become an elitist, participative type of project. We didn't want everybody to have to own 5 acres, or we didn't have to be able to be a member of the Rifle and Gun Club, or we didn't want to have forced people to be able to, or to exclude people who maybe not have those kinds of resources to be able to practice and enjoy the sport. Not everybody that shoots a bow hunts. Here in Jasper, and we're actually behind the 8 ball, but we've got a program, it's called NASP, which is National Archery in the Schools program, which is a huge program, and those kids probably never will hunt. It's a scholarship program. It's all about inclusion and being able to give people who are not necessarily 250 pounds and 6 foot tall to be able to participate in a sport where all things are equal. So lots of those people who are involved with that never will probably hunt. Maybe some will, maybe they won't. But there's lots of people who strictly target shoot, whether it's indoor or outdoor. National Field Archery, they'll shoot longer distances for that, or whether it's indoor. We don't have an indoor opportunity here in Jasper to be able to do that, but there are some areas in the area. So there's lots of people who do archery and don't hunt. And that's another one of the luxuries, or one of the neat parts about archery is that I can be able to work on, hone a skill that involves accuracy and discipline and stuff like that. That may or may not involve hunting.
In the same regard, though, there's people that shoot guns that don't hunt either, but yet we send them to the gun club or somewhere to do their practicing. They're not allowed to practice in the city limits either.
Sure, I appreciate that. Not a problem. Yeah.
How many crossbows do you sell in a year?
How about that you feel that are going to stay in Jasper area?
Most of them all stay in Jasper. Most of them all stay in the Jasper. Jasper's not only city, but in Du Bois County. I will share you that there isn't a small business in town that can probably support that. They can be able to stay supportive with just the population of Jasper.
So what are the people?
Inside the area as well. I'm sorry?
So what are the people that have them now are doing, what are they doing?
Well, right now they can't practice in the city of Jasper, and so they're practicing less and making do if they can, and if they have an opportunity to be able to go to grandma's or something along that line, or they're shooting in the basement or inside the house, or inside, they're finding a way to be able to do that in some other fashion, but at the same time, we're just trying to be able to give people an opportunity to be able to do it at home.
Kevin's answer would be better than mine. My go would be they're shooting them now illegally, and citing them in. I mean, let's call a spade. We're not dumb. You know, it's
Too, I mean,
Probably, but still.
in the city. It's just a matter of
I'm not going to deny that that's probably happening. When asked, though, I usually point them to the ordinance.
sure.
Because we want everybody to be safe as well. I've got it. Yeah, I've got a range in my backyard that half the neighbors use. There's lots of people who have archery bags in their front of, right by the side of their storage shed or next to the house or wherever, then they're shooting them in town. So there's more people that are doing it, just being discreet about it, and they're being careful about it, and they're not causing problems with it. We've got 16 years of proof of people that have doing this responsibly. And that's what we want to be able to do, is give them an opportunity to be able to do this responsibly then as well.
Kevin, thank you for your comments.
Thanks, Kevin.
I'd like to be able to give others a chance as well.
And I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Kevin.
Appreciate your business, because I know it's an anchor out there for us. And
You talk about youth hunters, they have to go through the safety course, and they really preach safety. That hunter ed course is.
Oh, yeah, it's a good course.
is that a requirement in archery? To hunt archery?
It's a hunting requirement, and it doesn't make any difference what you're using.
To get a license, you have to have.
To be able to get a license. There's some stipulations for an apprentice license for young kids who are just learning, but for the most part, to be able to get a license after a certain date, and that date escapes me, but older people are grandfathered in, but you had to be able to get a hunting license, you have to have gone through the hunter ed program. So to be able to answer your question, though, what happens is that, so by virtue of the people being hunters and having to have hunter ed courses to be able to buy a license, they've already been through some training by DNR that is strongly on safety and ethics and that kind of stuff and responsibility. So, yeah.
do you have to have a license to buy a bow and arrow?
No, sir. You don't need one for a blowgun or a slingshot, or you don't need.
Buy it and get it tomorrow in there, right?
Yes, sir. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Just like you can a shotgun.
Oh, yeah, I'm just asking, I don't know a whole lot about it either, but like I say, I look at the crossbow and I get pretty nervous with that. The other thing that bothers me a little bit, I know we're trying to get away from this, is that we can't control the power of it, is what I understand, is you pull the thing back and off it goes, is about the best I can understand on the crossbow part. Because I
want to explain it to you if you wish, but
hear that it is more powerful than the rest of the.
Some are.
Can be.
Some are not.
Buying a 22 or buying a high-powered rifle. I mean, you can buy at different degrees.
Depends on the specification.
That's right.
Right.
again, I appreciate the opportunity. And I'm available for questions anytime, if that helps.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have someone else who'd like to speak. If you'd approach and identify yourself.
Caleb Chambers, Jasper Police Department. I want to come here and just give some caveats to what Kevin said. He did a really good job, in my opinion. I'm coming here for specifically the Jasper Police Department and for the citizens of Jasper, and a very unbiased opinion. I don't live in Jasper anymore. So I think that's a good standpoint for me to look at it as, what can I do to help the citizens of Jasper? I used to live in Jasper. My grandfather, he used to not live in Jasper, and now he does live in Jasper. He's 86 years old now. He cannot use a crossbow. That's by far and away his most favorite thing to do is be in the outdoors. Since I've known my grandpa or can recollect him hunting, he's been using a crossbow, and he doesn't hunt anymore. It's a sad thing to see because we don't allow it. What no one has brought up, in my opinion, crossbows are safer as far as you can put an optic on there. It's point of aim, point of impact. Yes, they are faster. The feet per second, they're probably a little bit faster on some of them are not. However, in my opinion, someone that is not or is new into the sport, shooting a crossbow is a way better option than shooting a compound bow or a recurve bow or something along those lines. Philip, going back to what you said and safety issue and having a kid out there, I started shooting a bow when I was 8 years old, but my dad was out there making sure that I was doing it responsibly. It would be irresponsible of him to not be out there making sure I was doing the responsible thing. By the age of 10, I was going outside shooting on my own because I knew what I was doing. I knew how to shoot it. I knew what was safe, what was not safe. It's just being a responsible person. It doesn't matter how old you are. You know if you're being responsible. You know if you're doing wrong. You're born with it. You know if you're doing wrong or not. And that's where us as law enforcement officers and having codes and city ordinances, we use that common sense and say, hey, this is not safe. Okay, we're going to cite you for it and bring it to the city council, and they can determine off of. Luckily now we have body cameras that you guys can review. I believe if we go out, you guys could review, okay, this is what we observed. If you guys thought it's unsafe, okay. If you guys don't, then we can let them go with a warning or whatever the case may be. But as far as crossbows compared to compound bows or recurve bows, much safer in my opinion. Anybody have any questions for me as far as the difference between crossbows or anything along those lines as a law enforcement officer or as just an individual?
So from your comments there and what Renee had mentioned about 90% of the homes in the old Jasper area would not be safe. So if you came across that, you would shut that down?
Absolutely. And it's just like any other city ordinance we have. Just because we observe something doesn't necessarily mean we have to cite somebody. Be like, hey, Nancy, you're shooting a bow. You're being very irresponsible now. We need to be an adult. Let's not let this happen again. Just because we observe something one time doesn't mean we have to cite that person. Now, if next week she starts shooting a bow again in downtown Jasper and it's unsafe, hey, we gave you a warning. Sorry, but here's an ordinance violation, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, well, we understand that, yeah.
Questions for Caleb?
Thank you for your comments.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
And I don't think Nancy was able to, I'm sorry, I don't think Renee was able to get through all of the changes.
No, she wasn't. That's true. Do you know where you were? You'd gone through the backstops and getting ready to go through section 4, I think.
Well, speaking of the backstops, it doesn't really give a width. It just says 100% larger than the target in each direction. Well, your target could be this big, and your backstop would then be this big. I mean, to me, that just doesn't make any sense that we don't have a width on the backstop, just like we have a height on the backstop. So just want to throw that out there also.
Like a minimum size, is what you're saying.
According to this, a guy like me would need a 10-foot target, so I'd hit it, so I'd have feet on each side.
Doesn't say that.
Do you want that better clarified in it?
Well, I think that makes more sense, whether it be the new ordinance or the old ordinance. I think, to me, that would...
The new one says 100% larger. I mean, it depends.
But it doesn't say how big the target is. it just says 100% larger than your target on both sides, in both directions.
Minimum height.
10-foot target, then I got to have 10 feet on each side of my target.
But what are you saying?
If you're using a 10-inch target.
Put a can out there, I put this out there, to me, that's not big enough. It should at least be a minimum width, just like it is, the height is a minimum. I don't know what that amount is. I think this needs further discussion.
No, I can agree with the width then too, along with the height. I can see,
If
yeah.
you did a minimum, what if you did a 6'6"? If you had an earthen embankment that was 6 feet,
Wide's wide enough for my,
but 6 wide, if you're shooting this, 6 feet is plenty. If you're shooting a 6-foot target, you got to have 12, you have to have 6, 6, and 6. So if you did a minimum of 6 foot wide, 6 foot tall, or even 4 feet, I mean, 4 feet's a straw bale in there.
I don't think that's wide enough.
You don't, 6 is,
I wouldn't want that being aimed at my backyard and having a straw bale as the width there. Again,
Right.
A comment was made, I don't even know who made it, but everybody's looking at their own backyard, and I'm looking at mine. I'm struggling with this 90% of the homes in Jasper. There's no way it's safe in any of them. I'm not clear why we're doing this then.
So how did you address the issue when it happened?
You wouldn't want to hear the words. I mean, when my gas grill gets hit when I walk inside the door, and the kid walks over and he goes, "Oh, sorry, I want my arrow back." I didn't even know what to say, and my gas grill didn't know what to say either. So, but it's one of those things. It was just a bad situation. It scared the crap out of me, and I kept thinking, I immediately thought there is no condition in this neighborhood that I would deem safe that anybody can shoot any type of bow and arrow. None. And I have a sport that I'm very passionate about. I understand that, that you're passionate about your sport. I get
Right.
that. I'm also a concealed carry, and I believe in gun rights and safety and stuff like that. And I also applaud you guys for, helping out with, the Boy Scouts and all these different groups and bow and arrow safety. Those are wonderful programs. I just think that this archery has a place, and I don't think it's in the city of Jasper anywhere that I'm comfortable with driving around in the immediate downtown area that, Kevin, I'm not exactly sure where you live. You lived off of Stewart Road, didn't you, out in that area? So you have a...
Used to.
Corner of Cobblestone and Shooter Road.
Oh, okay.
I
So,
used to live out there.
okay. Okay. So, I mean, there obviously are some areas outside that 90%. I have no problems with it, but the 90% is the thing that bothers me. And the fact, to be honest with you, in my recollection, Renee has never led us astray. And I'm looking at her recommendation, and it scares me when she says 90% of the homes, she doesn't feel comfortable. And
I don't know about 90%.
yeah, and that was just a number you threw out. So that's what scares me. And again, I don't see how we're going to make that safe in my backyard. And again, I keep looking at my backyard.
There is nothing in the current ordinance or in the proposed ordinance that will give that youth permission to do what they did. The only thing we would do by not allowing crossbows, for example, is to punish those who are.
I agree. I don't want to take away that. And that's what I'm trying to work with. And I sincerely feel I am trying to work with that. I don't want to take it away from people that just like any sport, there's people that do it and they do it safely and they do it in the correct manner. But unfortunately, the line for common sense must have got bypassed by a lot of people, and this kid obviously didn't go in that line and get some.
And that kid's not going to read this new ordinance and say, hey, now I've got permission to do what I did.
Right.
He's not going to read that.
Well, the old ordinance.
Or the ordinance.
old ordinance said he could shoot it.
No.
Not supposed to.
Not in a reckless manner.
Right. Yes.
So that, I think there's some disconnect there. The old ordinance says, notwithstanding any other section of this chapter, it shall be unlawful to discharge any arrow in a reckless manner. And you're proposing that means that child was not allowed to shoot the arrow the way he shot it. That's not the person that I'm worried about. I don't know who you all are worried about, but I'm worried about the situation where there is a careful person. Maybe it's just a new person and they've gone out and they've set the target up, and they have the berm or whatever they need to have that complies with the letter of our law, and the arrow gets away from them. They're not being reckless. They just had an accident.
Talked to you about this went like this. What happens when you do this and your arrow doesn't reach your backstop? It goes up and over and sticks in my roof or whatever it might be, or in me because I'm standing out in my backyard.
That could never happen if we did not allow archery at all. So that kind of thing can still happen if we don't have an ordinance. We're not going to prevent accidents. That's what it's an accident. It's not recklessness, is what you're saying.
And so my thought is that in order to maybe satisfy everyone, well, or at least come as close as we can, is to set additional parameters, rather than saying we have to throw the whole thing out, which is one option, or making the changes that you're suggesting and just adding more equipment so we broaden it. Maybe the answer is that we have to fine tune it even more and set parameters about where it's allowed. I understand the idea that we're not, your comment about making it elitist, but at the end of the day, there just have to be some parameters. The things that you say a police officer would recognize as common sense, this is obviously dangerous, those are the kind of parameters that I would be talking about. Maybe, maybe it's not 5 acres, but maybe it's 1 acre. And again, I'm just now making numbers, but, maybe it's not 18, but if you're younger than 16, you have to have a parent with you.
But if you didn't have a parent with you, what if you had to show your hunter education permit? So somebody that's responsibly out shooting.
I'm not prepared, I don't know that we're prepared to go through each possibility here during this meeting. Maybe we need to table it and go back to the drawing board but
I would feel a lot more comfortable with that.
I would. And the other thing I just thought of, not only on your backstop, the height and the width, what about the thickness of that backstop? We don't refer anything to the thickness of a backstop, so how do I know that arrow's not going to go through there, too?
that will depend on the
Material.
Because as I understand it, there's that netting that's not necessarily really thick, but.
Ballistic cloth.
Yeah.
I can again tell you from our experience at home, we shoot into straw bales, through a political yard sign into straw bales that butt up against the back of our chute from 10 yards maybe, and probably not 10 yards in there. And we don't have an issue, but.
Are you using a compound bow or a crossbow?
Longbow.
You're using a longbow.
With a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old that I'm teaching to responsibly shoot their arrows so that they don't go sailing into Phil's backyard.
I think the 16-year track record of peace and tranquility under this current ordinance, I think shows that those who are enjoying the sport are self-policing, and they're doing a relatively good job, I would suggest.
Then why do we need to change the ordinance that we currently have?
Because there are those among us who cannot enjoy the sport.
On this, and like I said, I've talked to 24 people, and everyone said, are you kidding? Why would you let someone use a crossbow within the city limits? So, just throwing that out there. And then when I looked at this closer, I even thought, well, why are we letting people use a compound bow within the city limits? A compound bow looks just as dangerous.
I'm going to encourage us to resist the urge to let what we've seen in movies paint the picture for us. It's because something looks a certain way, it doesn't in and of itself mean that it's more dangerous than something else.
I've seen one movie that had these things shot in it. Those aren't the kind of movies I watch.
Rambo has one.
Nancy, I've not watched Rambo, even 20 years ago.
So right now, we have a motion on the floor to pass ordinance number 2020-18 by Chad and a second by John. Any further discussion? I can call for a vote on the ordinance since we have a motion and a second, and then go from there. Determine, or we can table it Can we table even though we haven't had a motion? We've got the motion?
Somebody else can make a motion.
Table, then you,
The only thing I would like to see added to the current ordinance, the way it's wrote, is the width in addition to the height.
Have a minimum.
And I like to see a direction. You know, again, I keep going back to that. I mean, I just.
It's in there, Phil. It's in there. Renee has not gotten to that, but it's in there.
So agreeable if we went to 6 foot height, 6 foot width.
As a minimum.
Inches a square as a minimum. So if somebody wants to shoot a Coke can, they have to shoot into a 6 foot by 6 foot berm.
I haven't done it forever.
No.
I used to do it in my old house. 6 foot width in addition to height is a pretty big backdrop, really.
It is big.
End of edge of a basic shed. Backyard large.
Personally, I still have a problem with the crossbow being in there. But I'm just one vote.
But you can understand too that those crossbows are not the least expensive thing out there either, so.
I can understand that.
Some responsibility to be able to afford one in the.
Very true.
first place. Again, not getting back to the elitist, but they're not inexpensive.
Let me ask you, do you want to take,
Motion unless the 6 foot width is added.
You can amend your motion, is what you're saying.
Include that, then that's fine. Whatever I have to do to my final
And
second.
I'm sure you're going to get to the point then where the direction of the target itself can't be facing, like example, my backyard again in an unsafe way. Is that listed somewhere in there?
Discharge of an arrow across a roadway, alley, or public right-of-way.
so it can't, right, that would be like.
But it doesn't.
But that's
it doesn't
still
say
not-
that the
Across property
target
line.
is the archer, the target, and then my house.
or adjacent property?
Number 2.
Discharge of an arrow in such fashion that it travels beyond the boundaries of the property on which the person is shooting, where permission for such use has not been given. So it's also deemed reckless. It's Section
Well,
5, number 2.
I don't want to wait and find the guy after the fact that he shot me. I don't think that he should be allowed to shoot in my direction, even if the arrow doesn't come my direction. I don't feel comfortable with that. I'm sorry. There is no way, shape, and form that I'm going to feel comfortable having somebody shoot a bow and arrow and my house is behind the target somewhere. I cannot see that being safe any way, shape, or form.
So I'm just going to suggest, we could call for the vote, and if it was defeated, the ordinance stays the way it is, right?
That's true.
The ordinance stays the way it is. Or if you'd like to table it, to adjust some language, to be more acceptable to the discussions of the council members, we can do that. But I'll leave that up to people that made the motion. Do you want the vote to carry forward?
I do.
You want to go over the vote?
I would like to.
The vote, okay. All right. And at this point, then, I will call for the vote, unless there is another discussion point.
But John did say he's amending it to the 6 foot by 6 foot.
And I concur that, if I need to concur.
Okay.
And could we add to the language to take care of Phil, that it cannot be, the target can't be in the direction, how would you say that?
There's no way anywhere in Jasper that you cannot, you can't shoot an arrow anywhere and not have a house behind it. There's no way. Unless you're in that 5% or.
But they're already currently doing that. I mean, there are areas in town, I'm sure, that
Again, I didn't even.
where they are, but
That's not, I don't think that's a valid reason. Now, again, I don't think that's a valid reason
but if you,
Pass an ordinance.
The people are doing it already. Yeah, I don't.
well, and I'm not saying that that's why I want to do it, because people are already doing it. I'm just telling you that there are targets, I'm sure, in the city, and I don't know of them, that are already facing in the direction of the neighbor's house and that have not had an issue.
I just don't think that's safe. I think this all is about safety.
No further comments on the council?
I don't think we do any harm by passing it in its current form, because, Phil, that already is unsafe. It already is unsafe, and this changes not that reality.
Well, one thing,
You think that this grants him permission to shoot toward your house?
It just says that if the arrow comes over there, but again, I don't want to be the time that it happened. You know? In other words, they're legally allowed to shoot with my house as a backdrop as long as it doesn't miss the target. But what happens when they do miss the target?
Currently, the ordinance does not give our police or code enforcement any authority to cease fire.
Yeah, this is actually cleaner. It's just adding the crossbows, and I think it's cleaner.
Again, they can still shoot with my house in the background. I can't do that.
That goes to Renee's suggestion about other parameters being included.
If you make it in such a way that the target, this is me, and I'm not speaking for Nancy, I see your point. If we make it that the target or the backdrop is 6 foot by 6 foot or whatever requirement you had.
Minimum.
And a home in a reasonable distance is not being used. In other words, there's no, if the home is a quarter of a mile away and there's no way that arrow's going to travel that far, I don't think anyway, again, I don't know that, then my house would be fine. But if my house in the city of Jasper and I'm the next lot over and my house is in direct line where that person is shooting, I cannot see and I cannot vote in any way, shape, or form that to be acceptable.
I think we could look at adding distances, maybe, you know, that you have to have so much distance where you're shooting, because then that would take in that, how that, let's just say that 5% has enough distance, but 95% does not have enough distance. So maybe we could just look at that as another option in getting this passed at some point.
I would feel comfortable passing it tonight and voting for it if you could tell me a reasonable distance that arrow will travel, that it wouldn't hit me or my family in my yard, me mowing in my yard. And you can say, Phil, you're not going to get hit by this here if that person misses that target. I can't believe that we're passing something that somebody is actually shooting at my house and this is legal. It makes zero sense to me. I'm sorry. I'm passionate about that.
If I could ask a police officer, if I shoot an arrow towards someone's home, would you consider that reckless? As something that could be cited?
Yeah, I would consider it reckless. And I also want to point out, I've worked, in the last 2 years, I've worked 3 accidents, mind you, of people shooting themselves with firearms in Jasper. Those were accidents. Those weren't people being reckless to where they were intentionally shooting at someone else's house. It was an accident. Unfortunately, they shot themselves. But if someone is shooting towards a house and they recklessly, knowingly and intentionally shoot at someone's house, that is a reckless manner. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They knowingly and intentionally shoot at someone's house or a person, that's reckless.
But what if they're shooting at the target?
Right, and they miss the target. That's what, not that they're purposely shooting at the house.
This was an accident. He just missed the target.
Certainly. And in that case, and I don't know the scenario, did he have what we're talking about, a backdrop that meets the standards of the proposed?
No.
He did not.
No.
That's reckless.
Yeah, but even at that, from where the target was and where my dead gas grill was, that 6 foot target that backdrop wouldn't have mattered. He would have missed the 6 foot backdrop. There's the 6 foot backdrop would not have stopped where it went errant over and hit my gas grill.
He was shooting up.
I don't clearly know that.
Up to get to your place.
Because it's too close. It was too close. I mean, it was like that, and he released it, and from that angle, a 1 or 2% degree angle is going to hit that target. 5% is going to kill my gas grill. So that's my point. This guy was not probably trying to be reckless. He just flat out missed the target. And that's my concern, is that somebody's going to come up and say, I was not being reckless. I had the recommended backdrop on there. I just missed the target. And if I'm dead, it really doesn't do a whole lot of good.
And if I can just point out, an arrow doesn't have a significant arch at a distance. And Kevin's got some arrow drops here. I don't know, everybody won't have one. But
I step out of your way.
An arrow, if, like Paul just asked, I don't know the scenario, I wasn't out there. If he was shooting from up on top of Bill Kaiser's house, or the top of the hill there, shooting towards Bill Kaiser's house, and he hit Bill Kaiser's house, more than likely that was reckless. He was probably did not have his backdrop, because at that point in time, that hill goes down, and he was shooting down towards the ground, so your neighbor was being reckless, in my opinion. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If they have a 6 foot by 6 foot by 6 foot for a backdrop, when you're shooting at a bag target or whatever, most targets, bag targets nowadays, are about this size, probably about, I don't know, 2.5, 3 foot by 3 foot, would you say, Kevin?
Probably smaller than that.
So if you have a 6 foot by 6 foot by 6 foot, that is substantial.
Again, if he would have had that, he still would have missed that.
And why do you say that?
Because I saw where his target was, and I saw where my gas grill was, and I saw where he was standing.
So
He would have missed that.
So
There's nowhere in my yard he can shoot with any, it can be almost the size of a garage or a house there. He probably still would have missed that because he was not proficient enough. He should not have been doing that, and he missed it and hit my gas grill at a substantial angle.
Okay, so
What I'm saying is that
he was being irresponsible, and
he was, but what I'm saying is that there's no way that anybody should be allowed to shoot at any target if there's a hole behind it.
Okay.
And if you do that in the city of Jasper, that's 95% of, I can't understand that, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm going to call it back to the vote, if you would. Thanks, Caleb.
Thanks.
And do you want to go forward with the vote with the amendment that we add a minimum 6 foot by 6 foot backdrop?
Yep.
Okay. So I have a motion and I have a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I have 3 opposed and 4 for. So the ordinance is adopted. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, the next thing on the agenda is public nuisance ordinance, and this is information only.
We're not voting on that tonight.
We're not voting on it, it's information only.
Right. So, sorry. Next time we talk about this, I'll ask Kenny to participate. Over the last several years, Kenny has had increasing difficulty in code enforcement. I'm sure that you've all gotten phone calls from from your constituents concerning problems that they have with their neighbors and things that they don't want to see in their neighbors' yards. And I'm sure you've seen those places yourself. So this summer, with the help of our legal intern, we researched and came up with new language concerning what we would call a public nuisance or miscellaneous nuisance in the city of Jasper. So the information that you have in front of you or that you were emailed is a draft. It's not final. What I would propose is that we take some time, the next 30 days or maybe even 60 days, to fine tune this based on what your thoughts are. Staff members are also reviewing it, although Chief of Police, Code Enforcement have already seen it several times and worked pretty closely with Kyra and myself to put this together. But the idea is that we want our code enforcement and police to have a clear understanding, and the people to have a clear understanding of what is allowed and what is not allowed, and try to balance, though, those things with people's right to be able to use their property the way they want to use their property. So this is our draft. This is probably about the 4th revision, so it's gone through a number of changes over the course of the summer. What I would ask for you to do is keep in mind the complaints that you get the things that you see, and then let me know if you find that there's something missing that is a common complaint, or if you feel like the language that we have in here is too restrictive, point that out as well, so that when we bring it to you for final consideration, we are as close as we can be to something that everybody feels comfortable with. And then the idea would be for that to become effective January 1st. So once we pass it, we would like to have at least 60 days or so for people to get a feel for what is included, what language is included, before they are faced with having a violation.
Renee, before when we were talking about that, I'll just call it the dog ordinance that we talked about forever, that would be included in here under the noise area possibly?
So actually, I think when we last discussed the animal ordinance, the language in the animal ordinance says that that ordinance is not intended to be applied in certain zoned areas, commercially zoned areas, because those areas would still fall under the jurisdiction of this, the noise section of this nuisance ordinance.
The noise part of it?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So do we have two people now in code enforcement?
We have, well, Steve is only with respect to UDO. He's exclusively UDO. Kenny also does UDO, but Kenny does everything, and Steve only works in the planning department and enforces provisions that are found in Title 16, which is our UDO.
And what does Bob Sunderman do?
Yeah, he's street department.
But he's approving, isn't his job?
Bob goes out on the sites to make sure that they're meeting the standards, the engineering standards, so the engineering specifications. When we get specifications from somebody like Rosmer, or if it's another company, then make sure we're building to those standards.
Okay, I know, I did read through all this, so I do have something just for discussion tonight, so that you can, okay, under number 3, property maintenance, A, it says more than 2 vehicles of any type regularly parked in the yard. I would like to say 1, just 1 vehicle should not be parked in the yard. I don't think people in Jasper like that. Any vehicles being parked in the yard. And also, instead of saying parked in the yard, to kind of compare it to something it says later on, it could say on any part of the property.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because, well, you heard this morning during our department leader meeting, vehicles and the parking of vehicles is a big issue, apparently. That was the single most discussed issue by the code enforcement with Kyra when she met. And it's all kinds of parking issues. It's people parking, just regularly parking in their yards because they have too many people living in their house compared to what they have space for in their driveway. It's people parking inoperable vehicles. Now, we do have language that deals with that, but that is another issue. It's also parking vehicles for sale. Also, people parking vehicles that are being worked on, whether it's their own vehicle or a friend's vehicle. So lots of complaints about vehicles, and this language is certainly not intended to be the final. In fact, I really struggled with what to even put in there, because I just really am not certain how people feel about what we should and should not allow, considering that we get so many complaints. So I am wide open, all ears as far as suggestions about what you think should be allowed and shouldn't be allowed.
In that regard, I'm not sure what the current law reads as far as vehicles being able to park in the yard.
Doesn't.
We don't address that at all.
Just disabled vehicles.
Okay, and then there's a word in here, appurtenant, I don't know what that word means. Is it supposed to say apartment?
Appurtenant.
Appurtenant. I don't know what that means.
Primary structure and appurtenant, which is kind of a related structure, like a fence or something that's not a building.
Okay.
But is, and then accessory structures are garages, sheds, those kinds.
I know on a note on the vehicles parked in your yard, talking to the stormwater folks, that they do recommend you do not wash your car in your driveway because of the runoff, that they want you to park your car in your yard when you wash it. So, that would be maybe an exception to it, that you're allowed to.
Where is that?
It doesn't say it. I'm just saying that stormwater, is recommending that, people wash your car in your yard.
So I would,
Doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't run, if it goes on your driveway, it runs down and runs into the street on like
Not in
mine.
my house, it
It
doesn't.
does on mine.
I mean, I'm going to drive my car in the yard to wash it. That,
No, I'm not saying you have to, but you're allowed to be able to do that.
okay.
In other words, some people look at it, like for me, I view it as I pull it on the side of the house when I wash it and stuff like that. And when I'm done washing it, I pull it in the garage or something like that.
which is the difference?
Keyword there, Phil, it says regularly parked.
Yes.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Yes, regularly.
Regularly parked.
Yeah.
And that's an issue. What is regularly parked? Should it be 72 hours, 48 hours?
Right.
Should it be days, weeks?
And if they irregularly park it?
You mean come and go?
oh, Lord.
And then on the next page, examples of items and materials which are considered to be a nuisance. Nuisance conditions include but not are limited to prolonged accumulation. Again, what is prolonged accumulation? For some neighbors, it's 1 day. For others, it's 2 months, or so maybe more of a definition of what prolonged accumulation means.
So right now, we require that trash be taken away weekly, and we consider more than a week prolonged accumulation.
And sometimes people,
Should it state that then?
We can.
yeah, and sometimes people hide it in their backyards, and I've called Kenny about some of those too, and they eventually get cleaned up.
We have a lot of issues around that.
I think this is cleaning everything up a lot more.
We're trying.
Give it more
Yeah.
teeth to the current situation
Yeah.
where you didn't have any rights to do some things because
It would give Kenny more teeth.
clean it up.
Yeah.
I have another comment I've talked to Kenny on several times, and I don't know how to address it or word it correctly, that my neighborhood as an example, most of the houses around me are all rental property. And Kenny has mentioned that by code that, you have to mow it, and what constitutes that one property that you and I discussed a couple years ago, that they had this company come in and go down the middle of the yard with a lawnmower, take 2 swipes down there and said, it is now mowed. But the other problem that what we see a lot of is that, and I kind of got in a little bit of an issue a few years ago with the city on as well, I try to make my yard look nice, so I have to clean up all my neighbors' leaves that they refuse to rake any of their leaves. I know leaves fall, and if it falls on a Thursday, I got events going on that I can't get to it on Monday or Tuesday, but to go the whole season without raking your yard, and then the wind goes and it all blows in my yard, and then I was the nice guy and raked them out of my yard and put them on the curb, and I got yelled at by the city of Jasper because in January, my gutters were full of leaves because I wanted my yard to look nice, and they told me that I need to get rid of all my leaves, and I picked the 3 leaves up that were mine, and the rest of them I said belonged to the person next door. I just happened to clean their leaves up. Sorry about the long story, but that was my point, is I don't know how to word this in such a fashion that,
I'll just put in
rental properties have to eventually rake their own leaves.
for leaves, see Phil Mundy.
There you go.
The rental property should rake their leaves just like anybody
But they
else, I
don't, and
guess.
that's-
but-
Those are the kind of things that Renee's asking you to bring to our attention, that we can be included in these nuisance ordinances.
16 under B also, it's again with vehicles, and so 16A, instead of more than blank vehicles, I just have 1 vehicle parked in any yard of the property. I don't know.
Right, again,
And then C on there, any vehicles not owned by the property owner that is being repaired. Or we have a situation up in our neighborhood, a couple blocks down, where it's obvious that guy is running a car repair business out of his garage. Kenny has visited him numerous times. The guy said, oh, they're all my cars. So he'll put on a paper plate or a dealer plate or something. Those are not his cars, because then they're gone. So he's getting around this, but
I think, I don't know if it's, yeah, I don't know if it's the same place, maybe it is, but I do know that Kenny has come to me on occasion and with a situation like that and has run the plates and found from the BMV at least that they are registered to
Someone else.
no, to him. But then maybe he owns it, but then he turns around, fixes it, and sells it or something. So, I mean, there are cars, and not only that, he will drive those cars like, I don't know, 80 miles an hour up the street and back down again. It's very unsafe. So, and this happens numerous times during the week.
So it may not, it sounds like it doesn't make sense to tie it to the ownership of the vehicle.
Maybe not
The
then.
number of vehicles and what they're there for.
Is there one thinking about in the island, Nancy?
No, it's just up from 15th and Jackson, 2 or 3 houses up there.
You need to tell Gil to quit doing that.
Well, those, again, those are the things that we want to know. We want that feedback.
Allowed to grow corn in our front yard. We have that.
Yeah.
Everybody does. Yeah.
Mike?
I've got a quick question. Is the public going to be able to review this before it's approved? I mean, is there going to be a public discussion on this before it's approved? Changes?
We can put it on the website.
Well, a lot of people don't have internet, and a lot of people don't know what's out there, basically. It'd be nice to have a public hearing inside the meeting here to discuss this before it's approved.
And that's why we brought the info. It's information only tonight.
Well, I don't understand.
So it should be
What I'm saying is
covered.
that there's a lot of things in that ordinance that could be a problem for people.
It can be.
Come to the Planning Commission.
Take it to the plan commission, then might.
Oh, to the plant. I thought you said, is that the plan?
Can this go to the plan commission before it comes back here on the nuisance ordinance? As an update for the UDO, or is this straight to the city?
Yeah, this is not part of the UDO.
Okay.
Well, that's okay. But I mean, before you guys bring it for actual voting and approve it, it'd be nice to have a public hearing about it, because there's more probably stuff in that ordinance people are not going to agree with. You know, that could be changed. So,
And so what we would do is have a public, it would be part of a public meeting. It wouldn't be a formal public hearing.
Gotcha.
You could get public input, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we've got an assignment.
Yeah.
All of that, it just seems like it's not very long, like there could be more to it, but.
Let me say, by the way, while I'm looking at it, the swimming pool, hot tub, that did not change. I just took it out and made it its own section.
Okay.
moved it down, so that's identical.
Ask that.
That's right.
Okay.
So how do we know if a person has a permit for a pool or not?
How do you know?
Yeah.
You can contact the planning department. That's where they submit the,
Do they keep a list of people, or?
They've got a record, yeah.
they do keep records. I don't know if it's an actual list. It might just be a book with the 2020 permits.
I think the pool thing they were talking about, because of the fence ordinance, they had that kind of on a separate list here going back to 18, and Steve started to look backwards.
Yes, Steve's working on that.
To 16, I think so. I'm not going to swear to that, but yep. Yep.
Okay, so anything else on that public nuisance? All right. Under other business, I do have one thing that I'd like to ask council, and that's to provide me the authority as mayor to extend the executive order that's in effect currently. And I'd like to take that executive order that would terminate at the end of this month, and it addresses the use of sidewalks downtown and our signs, give some relief to businesses using signage to attract some more business.
How long do you want to extend it?
I'd like to extend it to January 16th through the season.
Make a motion that we.
18th.
Yeah.
January 18th.
I would second that motion in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
I have a motion from Kevin and a second from Paul. Any further discussion on that?
I think it's a great idea. You talked about doing it to the end of this month or something, but you might as well just do it the whole Christmas season and make them all be able to get their feet back on the ground. I know, that's what I meant.
And I think revisit it in January and see what the,
What does that mean?
January 18th is a Monday.
It's a Monday, so it gets us through the weekend.
Yep.
You know,
Seeing look good.
yeah, we said yesterday, I don't,
Actually, I think we were too strict anyway, so if this really proves out, then we may want to go back and visit the UDO and allow them to do this, because it helps their businesses.
okay. So I have a motion and I have a second. Motion's you, Paul, right?
Kevin was the.
Kevin's the motion, you were the second? Okay. I have a motion from Kevin and a second from Paul. Any further discussion on it? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. And then, I don't have anything else, but I did want to thank you all for the budget hearings yesterday. I thought they went pretty smooth. I really want to thank our department heads for all the work they put into it, because they came in prepared, and I think it showed. It took a lot less time for council to go through it. And
A quick comment I'd like to make, if I could, was one thing I walked away feeling really great about is that you noticed every department head commented that he had the best employees and he was very proud of them and he'd go to bat for any of them. And that says a lot. So they're to be commended for that.
Just to add to it, I've been on the council for 14 years, and that was the best budget hearing that I've ever attended. So everybody was well prepared. You took the number and really set the budget up so we didn't have to take $1 million out.
You did a great job on that.
Great job.
Well, we've got a great team. Let's just put it that way. You know, it takes a good team. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Kevin.
Second.
Second from Chad. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. I think it was a healthy dialogue tonight, so I appreciate that. That's what it's about.
at this point, it is chronic going forward.